Dr. Emily Anderson tried to maintain her professional composure as the holographic figure materialized in the center of the United Nations Security Council chamber. The Myraxian ambassador, first speaker Nexus, towered 12 feet tall, its crystalline form refracting light into mesmerizing patterns across the walls. Even as a projection, the alien's presence commanded attention. Humanity has shown great promise. The translator rendered the alien's melodic frequencies into English. Each word appeared in golden text above the hologram's head. The High Command extends an honor few species receive. An invitation to the labyrinth. Emily's fingers tightened around her tablet. After 3 years of studying Myraxian behavior patterns, something felt off about this sudden generosity. The crystalline species had kept humanity at arm's length since first contact, engaging only in limited trade agreements and maintaining a carefully neutral stance toward Earth's internal politics. The Security Council members exchanged glances. Russian Ambassador Petrov leaned forward, his weathered face reflecting the hologram's shifting colors. "And what exactly is this labyrinth?" First speaker. The alien's crystalline facets rippled in what Emily had learned to recognize as amusement. The greatest achievement of the Myraxian Empire, a space station where species prove their worth to join the galactic community. We have deemed humanity ready for evaluation. The Chinese representative's translator struggled to keep up as she fired rapid questions about the station's location and protocols. Emily tuned out the political posturing, focusing instead on the subtle shifts in the Myraxian's crystalline structure. 3 years of research had taught her that the species' emotions manifested in microscopic patterns within their mineral forms. What she saw troubled her deeply. "Dr. Anderson." The UN Secretary General's voice snapped her back to attention. "You've studied the Myraxians more than anyone. Your thoughts?" Emily stood, aware of the hundreds of eyes fixed on her. "The invitation is unprecedented," she began carefully. "In all our documented interactions, the Myraxians have never invited a species to visit their core territories without at least a decade of diplomatic relations." First speaker Nexus turned toward her, crystal facets catching the light. "You show wisdom in your caution, Dr. Anderson. Perhaps this explains why your species has been chosen. The High Command believes humanity's potential deserves accelerated consideration." 12 light-years away, aboard the actual labyrinth station, the Myraxian High Command observed the diplomatic feed with cold amusement. Supreme Commander Vertex's crystalline form pulsed with dark satisfaction as they watched the humans deliberate. "They suspect nothing." Vertex's frequencies resonated through the command chamber. "Like all the others, they mistake our testing ground for an honor." Second Commander Matrix gestured toward the historical display. 47 species have entered our labyrinth. None survived beyond the second day. Their failures prove their unworthiness to join galactic civilization. "The humans show interesting traits," Third Commander Lattice observed. "Their adaptability and technological growth rate exceed previous test subjects. They may last 3 days instead of 2. The command chamber filled with harmonic frequencies, the Myraxian equivalent of laughter. They had perfected their methodology over 10,000 years. The labyrinth's challenges had eliminated every species that might threaten Myraxian dominance of the galaxy. Humanity would be no different. Back on Earth, Emily sat alone in her office, reviewing the Myraxian invitation. Her computer models analyzing first speaker Nexus's crystalline patterns suggested deception, but she couldn't prove it. Not in time to stop the diplomatic machinery already in motion. Her secure phone buzzed. "Dr. Anderson." "Secure line," a familiar voice said. "The Security Council has made their decision. They're assembling a team. Your name is on the shortlist." Emily stared at the Myraxian cultural database on her screen. "Let me guess. They want a xenobiologist who can read their body language. Among other things, your previous experience with special operations hasn't been forgotten." She closed her eyes, remembering skills she'd hoped to never use again. "When do we leave?" "The Myraxians are sending a shuttle in 72 hours. pack light. Something tells me we'll need to be flexible. As Emily began her preparations, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than a simple evaluation. She just hoped her suspicions were wrong. The Myraxian shuttle gleamed like polished obsidian against the lunar backdrop. Dr. Emily Anderson stood with her team at the boarding terminal, watching their minimal luggage being loaded by crystalline maintenance drones. The vessel's organic curves belied its massive size, easily 3 times larger than Earth's largest spacecraft. Anyone else feel like we're being sized up for dinner? Captain Jack Reynolds kept his voice low, military posture relaxed but alert. His former SEAL training showed in the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. Dr. Rachel Martinez laughed, adjusting the quantum scanner disguised as a bracelet on her wrist. More like lab rats. Their tech is reading everything about us. Environmental requirements, biological signatures, stress responses. The ship's probably a testing facility itself. Of course it is. Michael Hayes stepped forward, his diplomatic smile firmly in place. The psychological warfare expert moved with deliberate casualness. The evaluation began the moment we accepted their invitation. Everything is a test. Emily noticed the subtle crystalline patterns in their Myraxian escort shifting. They're amused by our discussion, she murmured. They think we're primitive for speaking openly about our concerns. The boarding ramp extended with liquid smoothness. First speaker Nexus's hologram materialized beside them. Your journey to glory awaits. The labyrinth welcomes those who seek advancement. As they walked up the ramp, Emily caught Hayes's subtle hand signal. He'd noticed something in the alien's phrasing. They'd discuss it later, assuming the ship wasn't riddled with surveillance devices, which it certainly was. The interior of the shuttle defied human architectural conventions. Corridors curved in mathematically perfect spirals, and gravity seemed to shift subtly between sections. Their quarters, though attempting to accommodate human needs, felt more like museum displays of Earth living spaces. Anyone else notice we're the only living beings aboard? Reynolds whispered during their first meal. The food synthesizers had produced reasonable approximations of Earth cuisine, but Emily noticed everyone choosing pre-packaged rations instead. Automated systems only, Martins confirmed, her quantum scanner having mapped much of their surrounding area. Even the navigation appears to be handled by crystalline AI constructs. Hayes leaned back, seemingly relaxed. Perfect setup for something to go, unfortunately, wrong with life support. No witnesses. The 3-day journey passed in a blur of subtle observations and careful preparations. Emily documented every crystalline pattern shift in the ship's structures. Martins mapped systems and backdoors. Reynolds memorized layout and choke points. Hayes analyzed every communication for hidden meanings. They were ready, or so they thought. The labyrinth filled their viewport like a mechanical lotus, massive crystalline petals housing different testing sectors. As they docked, Supreme Commander Vertex addressed the Myraxian High Command. The humans show concerning intelligence, Vertex observed. They suspect, yet still they come. Their curiosity will be their undoing. Second Commander Matrix replied. Begin the separation protocol. The trap sprung with elegant precision. As the team crossed the docking collar, emergency containment fields sprang to life. Crystal barriers sliced through their group like light through prisms. Emily found herself sealed off with Hayes, while Reynolds and Martinez disappeared behind shifting walls. Environmental contamination detected. The station's systems announced. Emergency protocols engage. Please remain calm as we resolve this situation. Emily watched patterns ripple through the crystal walls. Satisfaction, anticipation, hunger for data. The Myraxians weren't even trying to hide their emotions anymore. They didn't expect any of their test subjects to survive long enough to matter. Well, Hayes said quietly, his calm voice carrying volumes of meaning. I guess we don't need to pretend we're honored guests anymore. Through the crystalline walls, Emily caught a glimpse of Reynolds and Martins being herded deeper into the station. Her hand touched the hidden compartment in her collar, feeling the reassuring shape of tools she'd hoped not to need. "No more pretending," she agreed. "Time to show them why you don't underestimate humans." In the command center, the Myraxians began activating their testing protocols, eagerly anticipating another species failure. They didn't notice the subtle changes already occurring in their systems, changes that would soon prove that their perfect trap had caught exactly the wrong species to underestimate. The crystalline walls of the chamber began to shimmer with an iridescent purple haze. Emily's handheld atmosphere analyzer blinked red as corrosive gas started pouring in through microscopic pores in the ceiling. Next to her, Hayes watched the Myraxian text scrolling across the wall with growing amusement. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," he said, pulling equipment from his hidden pockets. The message literally translates to Inferior Species Elimination Protocol Stage 1. Emily's years of studying Myraxian biology suddenly clicked into place. "They're using crystalline-based corrosives," she said, quickly assembling components from her collar and sleeves. "This would liquefy their kind in seconds, but human biology isn't based on mineral structures," Hayes finished, grinning as he helped her construct makeshift rebreathers from their smuggled equipment. They designed their perfect death trap for their own species. Through the crystal walls, they could see similar gases filling adjacent chambers. Martinez's voice crackled through their subdermal communicators, hidden beneath their skin where Myraxian scans couldn't detect them. "You guys seeing this?" Her voice carried the excitement of a scientist discovering something extraordinary. "Their entire ventilation system is built on crystalline resonance patterns. Give me 2 minutes." Captain Reynolds' steady voice joined in. "Make it 1 minute. The gas in here is getting pretty thick, and I'd rather not test our improvised gear longer than necessary." Emily watched the crystalline patterns in the walls shift from confidence to confusion as their life signs remained stable. The Myraxians had expected immediate deterioration. Instead, their supposed victims were analyzing their technology. Martinez's laugh echoed through the comms. "Got it. Their system is beautiful but predictable, like a perfectly structured crystal. No room for variation." The purple haze began to recede as she hijacked the environmental controls. "I'm venting all chambers to space and sealing the intake ports." "Confirmed," Reynolds reported. "Chamber clear on my end." These folks really need to learn about redundancy systems. One access point for their entire ventilation network. Amateur hour. In the command center, the Myraxian High Command's crystalline forms vibrated with increasing agitation. Supreme Commander Vertex's surface was fracturing with stress patterns. Impossible. The commander's frequencies resonated through the chamber. "The corrosive protocols are perfect. We tested them on our own kind. The humans show no signs of deterioration," Second Commander Matrix reported, their form clouding with confusion. "They are studying our systems." Emily and Hayes had already started moving. The ventilation hack had revealed maintenance tunnels throughout the station's structure. Martinez's quantum mapping during their journey had given them a rough layout, and Reynolds' military experience helped identify likely command and control centers. "Their arrogance is their weakness," Hayes observed as they climbed through a crystalline service shaft. "They're so convinced of their superiority that they never considered their tests might be species-specific." Emily's scanner picked up energy signatures ahead. "Next challenge incoming. Want to bet it's designed for beings with crystalline nervous systems?" "No bet," Hayes replied, pulling out more equipment. "But I'm starting to think we should thank them. They've given us perfect laboratory conditions to study their technology." The next chamber hummed with sonic resonators, devices that would shatter crystalline life forms at the molecular level. Martinez was already in the system, analyzing frequencies. Reynolds had found access to their power grid through a maintenance terminal. "Hey, Emily," Martinez called over the comms. "Remember that paper you wrote about crystalline communication networks? Want to help me turn their sonic weapon into a makeshift broadcasting system? I've got some interesting feedback loops we could send through their command network." Emily smiled as she began reconfiguring the resonators. Around them, the labyrinth's perfect structure continued monitoring their progress, recording every move for analysis. But the Myraxians' greatest testing facility was about to learn a harsh lesson about human adaptability. Their next test should be starting soon, Reynolds reported. Something about neural maze protocols. Perfect, Emily replied, her fingers flying over the captured control panel. Let's show them why you don't build a single-species testing ground when you're dealing with humans. In the command center, alarms began to sound as the station's systems registered unauthorized access across multiple sectors. The Myraxians were about to discover that their perfect trap had become humanity's greatest learning opportunity. The neural maze spread before Emily like a crystalline web, its pathways pulsing with psychic energy designed to trap and shatter consciousness. She watched through protective goggles as Reynolds tested the edge of the field with a piece of their equipment. The device dissolved instantly. Well, Reynolds said, checking his readings, that would have turned our brains to soup if we walked in unprepared. Good thing Martinez found those psych shield specs in their database. Emily adjusted the makeshift psychic dampener they'd constructed from salvaged Myraxian tech. They're getting desperate. This is military-grade technology. No civilian testing facility would have access to these defenses. Speaking of military, Hayes's voice crackled through their comms. I'm reading their command protocols. Every challenge follows standard combat testing patterns. They're not just testing us. They're probing for tactical weaknesses. Martinez's excited whisper cut through the channel. Guys, you need to see this. I've tapped into their primary data conduits. The station's crystalline structure. It's one giant semiconductor. Every wall carries data. In the command center, the Myraxian leadership watched with growing horror as their test subjects systematically dismantled each challenge. Supreme Commander Vertex's surface was nearly opaque with stress patterns. Deploy the gravity wells, Vertex ordered. Increase testing parameters to maximum lethality. The chamber around Emily and Reynolds suddenly warped. Gravity twisted like taffy, trying to pull them in 6 different directions at once. Reynolds grinned, activating the gravity compensators they'd removed from their equipment during the shuttle ride. Classic multi-vector gravity attack, he said, moving smoothly through the distorted space. Standard Myraxian ship-to-ship combat tactic. They're running out of tricks. Emily's dampener protected them from the worst psychic effects as they navigated the neural maze. Martinez, how's that broadcast coming? Almost ready, she replied. Hayes' psychological warfare package is beautiful. Simple text messages, encoded in their own crystalline language patterns, highlighting every failure. Their command structure is already showing stress fractures. Hayes chuckled darkly. Amazing what a few well-placed doubts can do. Why do the humans remain standing? How do they bypass our perfect systems? What else have we miscalculated? Their entire hierarchy is based on infallibility. They can't handle being wrong. The station shuddered as another weapon system activated. Sonic pulses designed to shatter crystalline life forms reverberated through the corridors. But Martinez had already adapted their frequencies, turning them into carrier waves for her data extraction. Their weapons are just giving me more bandwidth, she reported gleefully. Every defense they activate creates new pathways into their network. I've downloaded tactical databases, weapon specifications, shield frequencies. We're going to need a bigger hard drive. Emily watched the crystalline patterns in the walls shift from confidence to confusion to fear. The Myraxians had created the perfect testing ground for their own kind, never imagining that their technological advantages could become weaknesses. Next section is processing multiple energy signatures, Reynolds warned. Looks like they're throwing everything at once. Gravity wells, psychic attacks, sonic weapons, and, is that a plasma field? They're panicking, Hayes observed, throwing away tactical doctrine in favor of brute force. Classic sign of command breakdown. Emily's scanner picked up massive power fluctuations. Martinez, what are you seeing in their networks? Their command structure is fragmenting. Lower ranks are questioning orders. Some are suggesting that maybe, just maybe, their testing protocols are flawed. Others are demanding increasingly aggressive measures. They're fighting among themselves. Reynolds secured their position as they prepared to face the combined assault. How long until they realize we're not just surviving their tests? They're starting to, Hayes replied with satisfaction. My latest message just went through their command network. Thank you for the comprehensive introduction to Myraxian military technology. The data will be invaluable to Earth's defense forces. The station's alarms reached a new pitch as the Myraxian leadership finally grasped the true extent of their disaster. Their perfect testing ground had become a playground for human ingenuity, and every new challenge only gave their supposed victims more weapons to use against them. Dr. Emily Anderson stood before the neural interface chamber, watching patterns of light dance across its crystalline surface. What the Myraxians intended as their ultimate trap had just become humanity's greatest advantage. Their entire species evolved from silicon-based crystals, she explained to her team over the secure channel. Their neural pathways are perfectly ordered, mathematically precise, but human brains are gloriously messy. Martinez finished, her voice bright with discovery. Their neural maze can't map our thought patterns. We're too chaotic, too adaptable. Every time it tries to predict our next thought, we go somewhere completely different. Reynolds' quiet laugh carried through the comms. So their perfect trap can't handle human creativity. That's almost poetic. In the command center, Supreme Commander Vertex's crystalline form had developed visible stress fractures. The monitoring systems showed impossible data. The humans weren't just surviving. They were learning, adapting, taking control. How do they break every pattern? Vertex demanded, their harmonics sharp with frustration. Every species has failed these tests for 10,000 years. Commander, Matrix's frequencies carried urgent warning tones. They are not simply breaking patterns. They are creating new ones. The station's systems are being reprogrammed. Emily placed her hand against the neural interface, feeling the vibrations of data flowing through the station's crystalline structure. Martinez had discovered that human touch created unique interference patterns in the data stream, patterns they could use. Hayes, are you seeing this? Emily called, watching new information cascade across her scanner. The station doesn't just test species. It records everything about them. Strengths, weaknesses, biological data. Strategic gold mine, Hayes confirmed. They've been gathering military intelligence on every spacefaring race they've encountered. And now we have access to all of it. Martinez's typing echoed through the comms. Better than that. I've found their core protocols. The station doesn't just record data. It updates their entire military database in real time. Everything we do here is being transmitted throughout their empire as tactical analysis. Reynolds whistled low. So when we break their systems, every Myraxian military commander can see it. Hayes finished, satisfaction clear in his voice. Their entire command structure is watching humans dismantle their perfect defense systems. The psychological impact. A new alarm blared through the station. Emily watched the crystalline patterns in the walls shift to previously unseen configurations. Fear. The Myraxians were showing fear. They're trying to lock us out, Martinez reported, her fingers flying across captured control interfaces. Too late. I've already created backdoors throughout their network. Every security patch they attempt just gives me more access points. Their rigid programming can't adapt fast enough to stop human improvisation. Speaking of improvisation, Reynolds called. We've got company. Security drones incoming. Looks like they're done trying to kill us with automated systems. Emily smiled, watching the drone formations through the crystal walls. Martinez, remember how their sonic weapons affected their crystalline structure? Already on it. Redirecting their own defense frequencies. Now, the security drones shattered mid-flight, their crystalline components unable to withstand their own weapons turned against them. The debris scattered across the corridor like diamond rain. Their entire technology base is built on perfect crystalline structures, Emily explained, collecting samples of the destroyed drones. But that perfection is their weakness. One flaw, one unexpected vibration, and their whole system crashes. Hayes finished. No redundancy, no adaptation, no survival. Just perfect, predictable failure. In the command center, panic was setting in. The humans had moved from test subjects to hunters, methodically taking apart every system the Myraxians had spent millennia perfecting. "We must contain this," Vertex demanded, their voice patterns showing increasing instability. "Purge the station. Destroy all data. We cannot allow them to." The commander's words cut off as every screen in the command center lit up with a single message, written in perfect Myraxian crystal script. "Thank you for the education. Shall we discuss terms of surrender?" Emily watched through the station's own security feeds as the message rippled through the command center. The Myraxians' perfect trap had become their perfect nightmare, a species that didn't just survive their tests, but turned them into weapons. The labyrinth's command center had descended into chaos. Crystalline officers fractured and reformed as contradictory orders bounced through their hierarchy. Supreme Commander Vertex watched in horror as humans appeared on every monitor, methodically dissecting millennia of Myraxian technological superiority. "Their movements make no sense," Matrix observed, their crystalline form clouded with confusion. "They take apart our systems without understanding the mathematical perfection behind them." Emily's voice echoed through the command center speakers, making the crystalline walls resonate. "That's where you're wrong. We understand your mathematics perfectly. We just choose not to be limited by them." On level 7, Hayes walked through a corridor of deactivated defense systems, broadcasting carefully crafted psychological warfare messages through the station's crystal matrix. "Your perfect order is beautiful," his voice carried through every crystal surface. "But perfection is fragile. Adaptation is strength." Martinez had transformed the neural maze chamber into an impromptu control center. Her quantum interfaces tapped directly into the station's crystalline architecture. They built their entire civilization on the idea of perfect, predictable patterns, she reported to the team. Their technology, their military doctrine, even their society, it's all based on mathematical certainty. "And then they met humans," Reynolds added, securing another section of the station. "The species that thrives on chaos and uncertainty." In a sealed chamber near the station's core, Emily studied the historical records they'd extracted. Every species they tested, she explained over the comlink, they judged based on how well they followed Myraxian patterns of thought. Logical progression, mathematical precision, perfect crystalline order. "But human minds don't work that way," Hayes observed, watching through captured security feeds as another group of Myraxian officers argued over their next move. "We jump between ideas. We make intuitive leaps. We see patterns where none exist and break patterns that seem unbreakable." Martinez's laugh echoed through their secure channel. "You should see their analysis programs trying to predict our next moves. They're literally burning out their processing crystals trying to calculate the incalculable." A new alert flashed across their displays. The Myraxian High Command was attempting to activate the station's self-destruct protocols. Emily watched the crystalline patterns shift to emergency configurations. "Martinez," she called. "Already handled." Martins replied smugly. "I replaced their perfect mathematical countdown with a human random number generator. Their systems can't handle the uncertainty. They'd frozen completely." Through the command center's monitors, Supreme Commander Vertex watched their perfect testing ground slip further from their control. Every attempt to counter the humans only gave them more access, more understanding, more weapons to use against their would-be executioners. "How do they do this?" Vertex demanded, their harmonics sharp with distress. "Their methods are madness." Emily's voice filled the chamber again. "Not madness. Evolution. Life on Earth isn't based on perfect crystals. We evolved in chaos, survived through adaptation. Your perfect order is beautiful, but reality isn't perfect. Reality is messy, unpredictable, ever-changing. Hayes added his voice to the broadcast, each word calculated to shatter Myraxian confidence. You built this station to test species against your standards. Instead, you proved the limitations of those standards. Perfect systems can't handle imperfect life. Reynolds secured the last defensive position around their improvised control center. Multiple crystalline signatures approaching, he reported. Looks like they're finally ready to talk face to face, or make one last, perfect attempt to eliminate us. Martinez added, fingers dancing across her interfaces. I've got control of every system in this section. If they try anything, they won't, Emily said confidently, watching the approaching Myraxian leaders through the crystal walls. They're starting to understand. Their perfect trap didn't just fail. It revealed the fundamental flaw in their entire civilization. The crystalline doors dissolved, revealing Supreme Commander Vertex and her command staff. Their once perfect forms showed stress patterns and fracture lines, physical manifestations of shattered certainty. We would speak, Vertex announced, their harmonics carrying unfamiliar frequencies. Uncertainty. Doubt. The beginning of change. Emily stepped forward, a human standing equal to the leaders of a civilization that had deemed her species unworthy. Yes, she replied. We have much to discuss about the true meaning of advancement. The central archive chamber of the labyrinth glowed with the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years. Emily stood before the massive crystalline database, watching as Martinez's programs extracted and categorized centuries of Myraxian military secrets. The scope of this is staggering, Hayes whispered, studying the tactical displays. Defense protocols for every Myraxian world, shield frequencies for their entire fleet, the psychological profile of every high-ranking commander in their empire. Reynolds maintained his guard position, but even his military discipline couldn't hide his amazement. They really recorded everything here. Every weakness, every vulnerability. Why wouldn't they? Martinez called from her workstation, surrounded by holographic interfaces. In their perfect crystalline minds, no lesser species could ever comprehend their technology, let alone turn it against them. The tests were just a formality to prove what they already knew. Supreme Commander Vertex stood rigidly among their fractured command staff, watching their civilization's most closely guarded secrets unfold before the very species they had planned to eliminate. Their surface showed chaotic patterns never before seen in Myraxian leadership. You have accessed knowledge beyond your right, Vertex stated, but the usual harmonics of authority had been replaced by uncertainty. Emily turned from the displays, her expression firm but not unkind. Knowledge has no owner, Commander. The real question is, what does one do with it? The archives continued their relentless revelation. The humans now possessed detailed analyses of every species the Myraxians had tested and eliminated. Each failure had been meticulously documented, their weaknesses catalogued and added to the Empire's strategic database. They weren't just testing species, Hayes realized, his voice dark with understanding. They were gathering intelligence. Every civilization that came here handed over their vulnerabilities, their technological limits, their tactical doctrines, and then conveniently eliminated themselves in our perfect tests. Matrix added, their crystalline form showing signs of moral distress. We believed we were ensuring only the worthy survived. Martinez's laugh echoed through the chamber. Instead, you handed humanity everything we need to dismantle your empire. Every defense, every tactic, every technological advantage you've built over millennia. We now know how to counter them all. The Myraxian command staff's patterns shifted in ways that Emily recognized as terror. Their perfect system had become the ultimate security breach. Their testing ground had become a treasure trove of strategic intelligence in the hands of a species they had gravely underestimated. Reynolds approached the central console, his military training allowing him to quickly grasp the strategic implications. Full orbital defense grid layouts, fleet deployment protocols, Communication encryption keys. They didn't just give us their weapons, they gave us their entire playbook. Worse, Emily added, studying the patterns in the walls. The stations already transmitted our success through their network. Every Myraxian commander now knows that humans didn't just survive their tests. We mastered them. The psychological impact alone. Hayes nodded, understanding the full implications. Their entire military doctrine is based on perfect prediction and control. We've proven that humans can't be predicted or controlled. We've shattered their fundamental assumptions about warfare. Supreme Commander Vertex's surface had become almost transparent with stress. What do you intend with this knowledge? The question hung in the air as Emily studied the tactical displays. Humanity now held the power to cripple an empire that had spent 10,000 years eliminating potential rivals. The Myraxians' perfect trap had given Earth everything it needed to ensure its survival in a hostile galaxy. That, Emily replied carefully, depends entirely on what happens next. Martinez's screen suddenly flashed with new data. Speaking of what happens next, we've got incoming. Looks like the rest of the Myraxian High Command just realized exactly what their perfect testing ground has cost them. The station's crystal walls resonated with approaching ships. The Myraxian Empire's leadership was arriving en masse, drawn by the greatest security breach in their history. Their perfect trap hadn't just failed. It had handed their destiny to the very species they had intended to destroy. The labyrinth's docking rings pulsed with activity as the combined leadership of the Myraxian Empire arrived. Through the crystalline walls, Emily watched capital ships take up attack positions around the station. Their perfect formations would have been intimidating if Martinez hadn't already accessed their command protocols. 17 dreadnoughts, 32 cruisers, Reynolds reported, studying the tactical displays. All running on the same crystalline technology we've already mastered. One command from Martinez, and their entire fleet goes dark. Hayes monitored the incoming communications. Their command structure is fracturing. Some want to attack immediately. Others are calling for negotiation. They've never faced a situation their protocols can't handle. Supreme Commander Vertex stood with their staff, watching their empires might gather uselessly around their compromised station. You hold the power to destroy everything we have built. Why do you hesitate? Emily turned from the displays, her expression thoughtful. Because destruction is easy. Creation is harder. Martinez, show them what we've been working on. The chamber's holographic displays shifted, showing new designs that merged Myraxian crystalline technology with human innovation. Perfect patterns interwoven with adaptive systems, rigid strength enhanced by flexible response. Your technology is beautiful, Martinez explained, highlighting key elements of the hybrid designs. But it's limited by your need for perfection. Look what happens when we add human adaptability to your precision. The simulation showed hybrid ships that could reconfigure their crystalline structure on the fly, adaptive defense systems that learned from each attack, communication networks that grew stronger from random interference. Hayes stepped forward, addressing the gathered Myraxian leadership. You spent 10,000 years eliminating species you thought were inferior, he said, his voice carrying through their crystal communications. But diversity isn't weakness, it's strength. Every species you tested had something unique to offer. Reynolds activated another display, showing the historical records they'd extracted. Look at your own data. Each species approached your tests differently. Some excelled at aspects your perfect patterns couldn't match. Instead of learning from them, you eliminated them. The Myraxian commander's patterns shifted as they studied the evidence of their own short-sightedness. Generations of potential allies and innovations lost to their pride. We could have learned from them, Matrix realized, their crystalline form showing new pattern combinations. Every failure we documented was also an opportunity we destroyed. Emily nodded. Exactly. And now you have a choice. We have everything we need to defend ourselves against your empire. We could use this knowledge to ensure you never threaten another species. Or, Vertex's harmonics carried genuine curiosity. an emotion no Myraxian commander had expressed in recorded history. Martinez activated the final display, showing a new design for the labyrinth. No longer a death trap, but a true testing ground where species could safely demonstrate their unique capabilities, where differences were studied and celebrated rather than eliminated. Or we work together, Emily proposed. Turn this station from a tool of elimination into a center for innovation. Let each species prove their worth not by matching their standards, but by contributing their own strength to a greater whole. Hayes monitored the crystalline patterns as her words resonated through the Myraxian command structure. Uncertainty gave way to consideration. Rigid patterns began showing subtle variations, the first signs of adaptation in their perfect crystalline minds. The gathered fleet's formations shifted, perfect patterns giving way to more natural arrangements. Throughout the station, thousands of years of accumulated combat protocols were replaced by something new. Possibility. You could have destroyed us, Vertex observed, their form showing completely new patterns. Instead, you offer to make us stronger. Reynolds smiled. That's the difference you never understood. True strength isn't about destroying what's different. It's about growing from the challenge it presents. The labyrinth's crystals hummed with new frequencies as ancient protocols were rewritten. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't in defeating the perfect trap, but in transforming it into a bridge between worlds. Emily watched as Myraxian and human engineers began working together, their differences becoming advantages rather than obstacles. Sometimes, she reflected, the best way to break a pattern is to show there's a better one waiting to be discovered. The station that had meant to prove humanity's unworthiness became instead a symbol of their greatest strength. The ability to turn enemies into allies, to transform destruction into creation, and to show that imperfection could be the greatest perfection of all.